Let's take a look at Amazon stock. So firstly, let's draw in a parallel channel. We connect the lows here, of course, and if we draw them up to the highs, we have the range that the stock has been trading in recently. You tried to wick out of this particular setup and go higher, but it did not happen. Stock came back in and you're now trading below the midpoint of the parallel channel. So that is a bit of a bearish look. To start things off here on the stock, we had a gap around 220 that was left after you gapped down. That has now been filled. There is another one around $230. So at some point that gap may be filled before you head lower. I wouldn't be too surprised if the stock gets some kind of recovery rally all the way to $230 before then potentially rolling over. I think I would be probably favoring the bearish case here since we have tagged the top of the trend line here. We came back to the bottom. We then tagged the top again. You would imagine the most likely scenario is that we come back down to the bottom of the parallel channel before deciding whether to move higher up and again, maybe to $265 or so, or break through the parallel channel and head lower. If we were to have a lower target, then I would be looking at these previous lows here for a potential strong level of support around $82 or so. That would be a level that I think you get a pretty decent bounce from if you were to break down from this parallel channel. But we're quite far away from that happening right now. You would still need a further minus 18% move down to $175 or so, and then breaking below that before you would be targeting $81. If I throw on the cycle indicator here, you can see that we had a sell signal back here, and we now are in a bearish regime for Amazon. Of course, there was this big run up all the way from 2023, and we now seem to be rolling over a little bit. You had a fake out here during the tariff sell-off, went to the bottom of the channel. Will we now go back down there now that we have had a sell signal again and are in a bearish regime? My money would say probably yes. I would be targeting $165 before we get to $260. Now, if you're bullish on the stock and on the stock market, then you may see continued upside after that. Just important to keep in mind that we are potentially entering the start of a nasty bearish trend on Amazon. Why might that be? Well, Amazon quite vulnerable to the situation in the Middle East right now, the Iran war. They have fulfillment centers in the Middle East. They have data centers as well, which have been hit by strikes from Iran. So not to mention the additional shipping costs for their products, which is going to lower their profit margins and all the rest of it. So there's some negativity likely to be experienced by the stock as a result of the conflict. So that's something to keep in mind. And that could explain why we maybe end up heading lower on Amazon if the conflict is to continue. If we take a look here at the Amazon over QQQ chart, the NASDAQ, we can see if we draw in a parallel channel like this, then this gives us some idea of the potential downside and upside compared to the NASDAQ, essentially, that we might see for Amazon going forward. So we are trading pretty close to the lower level of the parallel channel. If we were to get there, that would be a further potentially 15% or so underperformance versus the NASDAQ. I would imagine if you do reach those levels, you would then head higher. So there may be outperformance coming for Amazon after you get to these particular levels. When we visited there back in 2006, 2008, and 2015, they all marked points from which Amazon was able to rebound and massively outperform the NASDAQ. So I would be looking to maybe get a further 15% underperformance from Amazon before you then can start to outperform again. What does that look like? Well, I would imagine if you have a bit of a correction in the QQQs, then it could mean that Amazon sells off a bit more, 15% or so more. And in my opinion, that would probably mark the bottom. You'd then maybe have the Fed stepping in, decreasing rates, this kind of thing, adding liquidity into the market, which would presumably send Amazon back higher and perhaps even outperforming the NASDAQ once again. So that would be my outlook on the stock. I would say upside in the short term is possible to fill the 230 gap, but in the medium to long term, I would be expecting a bit more downside and even underperformance, especially if the Iran conflict is to continue affecting Amazon and their profit, etc. That being said, I hope that video is helpful for you guys. Thank you very much for watching. Subscribe as always for more videos, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.